and if you went to the movie, you'd go to the Chicken Roost after. And he had a regular group called the Lunch Group that were there every at lunchtime, and they were some of our more prominent business people. There was Jordan Livingston, there was Howard Rosenberg, there was Lou Davidson, Paul Stringer, the doctor, would come there for lunch, Bob Fenwick. They would all come there, and Max would do the same thing, lobster salad and cream cheese. And they would schmooze a little bit for their lunchtime an hour, and your family were great customers there. He had a little room in the back where he'd make up special orders. There was no better food anywhere. Even now, I think I can still think his lobster salad and his calf's liver, and of course the chicken. He made a fortune from pieces of chicken left over from chicken dinners, I think. That chicken sandwich. His sauce was distinctive. Everything was very distinctive, and people still talk about it because it was part of their lives, growing up, dating, after theater. I used to do a program there every Saturday afternoon called Meet Me at the Chicken Roost. I'd go and interview some of the customers, and we stole an idea from Groucho Marx program, you know, the secret word, and the duck would drop down and you'd win extra. So if they said the secret word, they got their lunch paid free. How did they say the secret word? You'd steer your question. If you think, well, that'd be nice if they won, you'd make your question in such a way that they'd have to say the secret word almost. Oh, you did the secret word, and you got their lunch paid for. So it just had the, and of course from that, he was very ambitious, and he was doing catering, as I mentioned earlier. When the Forum came in existence, he got the contract to do catering there. They worked hard. Cripes, they were in there digging and cleaning, and they wanted to see it work. And that's the way Max always was. He was hands-on. I think his slogan was, if you run a restaurant business, the front door may be important, the cash register, but twice as important is the back door. That's where things come in, can go out, that you don't want to know about, you do know about. So he was just a great operator. Then he got into doing Jewish events. At one time there was people like my aunt, Mimalai I called her. She was the caterer. She was just doing a home cook deal. Mrs. Smirlick, the Smirlick family, their mother became a caterer for the Jewish affairs. But then we got to a more sophisticated level, and we went for people like Max Mintz with fancier stuff. Although we did start off with some good basics like that soup and all that before they got real fancy with Cornish hens and whatnot. And there's fancy words for Lake Ontario water and all that sort of stuff. He was colorful. That's what I can say about him. He was a character. He was colorful. And any successful business, I think, had the personality stamp of its owner on there. The same way we went to Lou Davidson for clothes, because he was the personality, and he was the number. I did one of my columns once. I talked about how fortunate we were in Hamilton to have some of the finest talents in anything. There was no finer haberdasher or tailor than Lou Davidson anywhere. There was no finer interior decorator anywhere than Harvey Sobel. There was lawyers. Well, we had Ted Stringer, who became top lawyer in Toronto, as Levinson. Forget his name. He went over to Toronto. His first name Marty may have been. And we had George Levinson, Levinson Shoes. It was a fine, classy, high-class shoe store, and he was a high-class guy. He was very suave, gray hair.
Even Charles.
Charles, the father, and he charmed the ladies, and he just had everything. And very proud of the fact that he was a member of the Rotary Club. He was a little puffed up with that sort of stuff, but he was a character, and that's what made that store different than a lot of the others. He had the best stuff. He had the best salesmen. And it's interesting that talking about shoe business that Ken Sobel's sister and brother-in-law moved into Hamilton in the shoe business. Frank Dorson. And they, and this is an interesting story. I got to tell. Dorson's daughter, Ken Sobel's niece, married Larry. They're in the real estate. They got into. He had a shoe store also. Larry. What the hell? I can't think of their married name now, but they. When the shoes business was dying out, the girl, got into the real estate business and became very successful. Then Larry joined as part of the real estate business. Now here's the interesting thing. You talked about that ranch on Highway 25. Now that one was sold by the Sobel estate when Sobel died. And it must have traded, you know how real estate goes in cycles, it's successful, somebody comes and buys it and has big plans for it, and then the real estate dies and they got to sell, they're bankrupt. It went back and forth 4 or 5 times. And finally a company comes in and develops it. And who should have the exclusive rights to sell those homes but Ken Sobel's niece. I can't remember. Everybody will know who she is.
So going back to that thing you said about Hamilton's got the best of everything. You mentioned Lou Davidson.
Yeah, I was trying. I can't remember.
Harvey Sobel.
Harvey Sobel.
Was Max Minson there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For caterers. But even before that, I'm thinking these others. I mentioned the lawyers. The Schreibers, of course, were famous lawyers. Our doctors, we had, like Bill Goldberg was as good as any doctor around, and he was head of medicine, you know, at St. Joseph, chief of medicine there. His brother, Dave Goldberg, a lawyer, very successful, and a war hero, interesting story in itself, who he was shot down. He was a pilot, and he was shot down and saved by the French guerrillas, and they've channeled him out through Italy and everything to get back to England. He had a very interesting career. Furriers, it was mentioned Jordan, I guess that was this, even before that. We had, Frida Rosen, father, they had a fur store. Frida Rosen, I can't, is it Blutt or Rosen? Seymour Rosenblatt, is it? He's very, very sick right now. Her mother lived to about 90-something, a great bridge player. Gold something on modern furriers. So, I just think of the talents of those 3 in particular and their ability in business and in professional things. So I remember doing a column once on...
Could you talk about Lou Davidson a little bit?
Well, Lou Davidson, very handsome man, very very well dressed. He had a build that for himself that could be well dressed. Very classy, mustache, bald head, and knew. I think he came. I don't know. His father was a tailor, but he came from mean beginnings, you might say, from common beginnings, but he had it. He had that personality. He had the suave. He had the ability to make a mark in that business. You went in there and he made you feel that this is. I was making $50 a week or something, and I had to go to Lou Davidson to buy a suit. Well, for me, it was image. You wanted to have image. And, the suit cost $100 and something. Was $100 at that time. Some of his customers were characters like the late Stan Sobel. There was another larger-than-life character who went on, to great things in the steel business. I remember running into him on my honeymoon. I went to with Helen to Detroit, of all things. And who should I meet when I walked into the hotel but Stan Sobel. He was living at that hotel. And he hosted my wife and I at the nightclub that night. Dorothy Shea was the entertainer. He was a wonderful fella. And he was the #1 customer at the Brand Inn, another famous place. He was there practically every weekend.
Did Stanley Sobel live in Hamilton?
Yeah, he was born in Hamilton. He's part of your family.
I know, but then what happened to him?
Well, I don't know whether he was representing the Intermetco when he went to Detroit, or he wanted to go on his own. So he went to Detroit. That was during like wartime, just after the war. There was a lot of steel being sold over there and scrap because of the automobile manufacturers. And then he came back and started his steel fabricating business, Kent Steel. They were located in Hamilton, but he loved show business. And he was a big macher in the Variety Club, which is the club of all people in theater and show business. He loved going to their meetings and their dinners, and was had a warm heart. Their big thing was Variety Village for handicapped kids. He worked for that very strong. He just liked liked being with those kind of people. He was too big for Hamilton, you might say. Bigger than life itself.
How about Harvey Sobel?
Harvey, so I did an interview with him once because I was trying to figure out how he. I think he mentioned like his family were clothiers. His father was also a big, handsome man. Sobel's Clothes in the Lister Block, which was a prime location at one time. And Sammy, his brother, I think the older brother, took to the clothing store. He liked that. He liked that business of dealing with people, and then he went into the manufacturing and wholesale. But Harvey tried to work in the store, and it wasn't his. He says when he was a kid, he liked to arrange furniture at the house and flowers and whatnot. And eventually he got into the field, and I think his talents were hired in Toronto, and he moved to Florida, and they were appreciated in Florida also. And also very community-minded. And he attracted like-minded people, some great people, like he was very close to Gilda Chino, I guess, Gilda Chino, an Italian lady who had kidney problems. She had to have go to the hospital 2 or 3 times a week. She was a great fundraiser for the Kidney Foundation, and she knew who to go after. Sheila Zach, there's another larger-than-life character.
Okay, talk about Sheila Zach.
Sheila Zach, her name was Walters. Her father, Ab, was a nice, quiet guy, but her mother was in the hat business. She was somebody who had to be in the hat business. Very theatrical, very florid, just, somebody you'd expect has talent. And Sheila took after 100%. And she also liked doing things in Hamilton and liked circulating with those people and sponsoring and being involved in the arts and in theater. She was a part of a very important community group of Jewish people that I mentioned that meant a lot in Hamilton and did a lot for Hamilton. I don't know if we still have the same today. I think it is.
Who do you mean? Who else besides Sheila?
Well, I was at the time. There was Harvey Sobel. There was Sheila. There was, Lou Davis is a funny thing. I got to tell you another, if it fits in or not. He was the #1 tailor in Hamilton, for all the clients, business leaders, executives. We had a character in the radio, the early days of radio, Logan Stewart. It was gay, which wasn't exactly kosher in those days. Great broadcaster, very dramatic. He was in the armed forces. He came here. He was an Anglophile. He loved things British. He had a riding crop, and he affected a British accent, you might say. And then there was an annual social event, was kind of big at the time, the Fireman's Ball, believe it or not. It was where everybody had to go. The politicians and people like I'll mention now, Lou Davidson. And Logan Stewart came back to the studios one day. I said, "How was the dance last night?" He says, "Terrible." Why? You realize I had to dance on the same floor as my tailor, Lou Davidson? So that was kind of funny, because Lou Davidson was miles ahead of him.
Was Sheila Zach an actress?
I think she did some. You know who was an actor? Rosalind Tackman. actress. Her maiden name was Siegel. And she was actually in the Hamilton Theater Guild. She was an actress. I think Sheila, I don't remember anything in it. I think she loved it. I don't remember if she took on any of the roles except maybe some that were done in for the Jewish community.
What about Millie?
Well, there's a story, eh? The Netkins, also York Street, hand to mouth, you might say, existence at the time, like all of us. Her father, Sam Netkin, was Cab Calloway of this time. You know Cab Calloway looked just like him, Heidi Hyde, the Nehru entertainer. Sam was, and also larger than life. Wheeling, dealing, party giver, football. When football was big in Hamilton, he had parties that you couldn't even believe. Vegas, they'd fly down on those trips. Max Minson, these high rollers. Who else? I guess the Sam. He owned. His son is an accountant, retired. Halpern, Sam Halpern. These guys, there'd be these trips to Vegas. It didn't cost them anything, but as long as they gambled pretty good. And Sam would go down, think nothing of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 at the time.
How did Sam Netkin make his money?
Sam Netkin was a produce dealer around the market. He had a store there, or at least a warehouse and a store, and he handled produce. And like my father went into business once with one deal. They went and bought a load of cantaloupes or something. They just, and my father didn't wind up too well with that one, but he would get money and go out and buy a load of something and sell it, and very small. But as he had more and more success around the market, he started to expand. Eventually, they got out of all produce and concentrated on bananas. And they became the #1 banana supplier for Dominion Stores, which was a large food chain at the time, the Loblaws of its time. And then they would deal in other large loads of stuff brought in, loads of oranges or carloads of potatoes. They would deal in all that. They'd buy on the futures, and sometimes they made more money on the insurance because the stuff would get rotten on the way. But they were hustlers, they were dealers, and they had the nerve to take the chance. And that was the kind of guy Sam Netkin was. Great party giver, great schmoozer, had the right people there. That knew how to the policemen and the judges and all that sort of stuff that you read about today. And his party room was above the warehouse store on McNabb Street. And then Sonny took over the business, and I think he had problems with Dominion Stores. I think he had a run-in with him. I think he thought it was bigger than Dominion Stores, and he lost the contract. And he was also a chip off the old block. There was Sonny Netkin. There's another guy who knew how to dress flamboyantly, who had a big smile, and he was show business. When he was there, the room lit up. So that's how Netkins, and Millie, I guess she had this talent creatively. I didn't think she put it through commercial use, because she married Ben Max Mintz's brother, and they were settling down there. I don't know if she was doing some clothing on the side or not at the time, but there was that tragic fire where, of course, Ben lost his life, and so one of the children too. And that's when she started opening her business. And then along came Alan Gould, of course, and helped her expand with his ability to think larger than. There was nobody better with having a sense of style, and being able to transfer the confidence to her clients. They'd come in from Toronto, believe it or not, because they believed in her. And a lot of us, that's what they're like, I believed in Lou Davidson, whatever he was going to do was right for me. And same thing, you buy a car, if you believe in that guy, if you can establish that trust, and really have the way to do it. And I guess she's larger than ever now. For a long time they were manufacturing, and they had an outlet in New York, and I think I did a story on her once. Also, she belongs in that category I was saying about famous. We have talents here that are as good as anywhere in the world. Yeah, but we all came from the same 10 blocks around Hamilton, York Street and all that.
Do you see Hamilton recovering? You know, like the downtown core. Can you imagine a time where it might recover?
It's going to take some kind of miracle, I guess. I really can't. First of all, they want to have people with housing down there. Well, they're getting some of that, but how can they shop? How can people? Where are you going to shop there? Jackson Square has become sort of a discount.
What happened? Jackson Square.
It was the busiest
What happened?
mall. Well, people moved out. People started buying their homes in the mountain, Stony Creek. You know, for me to go to Stony Creek is like a long trip. Imagine what it is for Stony Creek. What do they want to come down
So
here?
it was really the movie.
It was the malls.
The malls in the suburbs.
Malls did it. The first one was the Center Mall, which was the racetrack. And the E.P. Taylor Group took it over, and they made the Center Mall, and then they closed it. Became a #1 mall. And even Jackson Square, when it first started out, I understand per footage was one of the most successful malls in the province. But then the customers weren't coming because they were moving out, and they were going to Lime Ridge Mall, and you know, it's much more convenient to go parking.
Parking, yeah.
And these stores never tore them down, or the ones like I look at Herbert S. Mills, and you know, people used to come from the States to buy the china at Herbert S. Mills. They would stop off here. And then the Mills Hardware, which became a nightclub, and the hotel. It's just like it happened in a lot of American cities. I guess what the cure is, they say maybe more people living here would use. Maybe the downtown has to become like a Lock Street has become. It's become, you know, a nice character and everything.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of the Jewish community, do you feel that?
Well, there's no. First of all, the entrepreneur has changed. If there are any Jewish kids or entrepreneurs, it's either in music or in movies. They're not businessmen. They sure as hell don't want to become retailers, which is what the Jewish entry into entrepreneurship was at one time, besides scrap. It was retailers, men's clothes. They were the schmutta business. They made the whole business. And these kids don't want to go in it. Even their parents don't want them to go. I read an interesting, well, this has nothing to do with it, book on Jewish criminals in New York. They were more powerful than the mafia at one time. And the difference between the Jewish mafia and the Italian mafia is the Jewish mafia didn't want their sons to be in the business. They get an education, go out somewhere, whereas the Italians, they built their homes right in the neighborhood, and the kids became in the business. So that was the end of the Jewish criminal class, you might say, unless they became more sophisticated criminals, I guess. But I don't know when it would have to come from, as I say, from theater, from music, from law. So where's the best law business? Toronto, you know, the lawyers there, the big business, the big money. But even then, they're only like working for other people. They're not building industries. They're not building businesses. And when they did, the kids didn't want to go into them, I guess.
So would you say the golden age of Jewish Hamilton is in the past?
Well, you see, it's become a professional, I guess. It's like the doctors at McMaster, or the few lawyers that are here. I don't see what they can get into. And then even Ken Sobel, he passed on. The radio station was sold to. At one time, Hamilton, you couldn't. You know what? There was you couldn't have multimedia ownership at one time. Now, CKOC owns. CKOC owns K-Light FM and Cham. They never allowed it at one time. And they cut their costs because they have one office for all three radio stations. And the other station, the ML, is owned by a huge international corporation. Or not international, national corporation. So they have three radio stations there, ML, Y108 and Y95 or something. So even I think there may be one. I guess the only Jewish show that I know of in the media business is the Aspers. They own Global and Can West.